From Austin Film Festival, this is On Story, a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers, creators, and filmmakers. This week on Story, we're joined by the co-writers of Wicked and Wicked for Good, Winnie Holzman and Dana Fox, to discuss their experience adapting this beloved story for the big screen. Holzman and Fox deep dive into their process of writing an emotionally grounded story set within the fantastical world of Oz.
We were always talking about what can you do in a movie that you can't do in a musical. We started almost every discussion with that. So it was a lot about close-ups. It was about Elphaba can actually fly. She can go places. That's crazy.
Right, exactly.
We can see her as a baby. You know, Winnie always talks about, like, they wanted to do that on stage, but then you've got this child and you're covering them with this, like, toxic green paint, and you're like, you're here for 10 seconds.
Couldn't do that, but never let go of that dream.
But never let go of that dream. and then there we did it.
Okay, let's do the montage version of the origin of this whole project, you know, how you came into working on it. But I want to kind of like fast forward so we can get to this movie.
So in the early 60s, no, I'm kidding. So basically, Stephen Schwartz, the great Stephen Schwartz, the remarkable artist.
I already heard somebody sing.
He's incredible.
He desperately wanted to make a Broadway musical out of the novel, which he was captivated by the essential idea of that novel, this idea that you don't know the true story of what happened in Oz. You don't realize that this vilified figure is actually a heroine, and let's look at the whole story through her point of view. So basically, he brought me into this. Lucky me. We opened on Broadway 2003. We took this, I would say, the spirit of the novel. We took certain key things that we fell in love with from the novel without taking the plot of the novel. But the spirit of the novel is a political statement in a lot of ways. And we always knew that there was going to be a movie unless we were a big failure, and we were obviously not a big failure because Universal was our main Broadway producer. Oh, okay, so unless things went very badly indeed, we were going to make a movie at some point.
But that was an unusual trajectory because Universal had bought the rights to the book to make it into a movie, and Stephen Schwartz pulled it and said, no, let me make it into a musical.
Begged.
Which is like, that's not a thing.
Yes, and the movie had been started, but it was going to be a non-musical movie. So he convinced them. He's a very convincing person. And also Mark Platt, who then had just stepped down from being the head of the whole studio and had just opened his office as an independent, as a producer, affiliated with Universal, and whose project it kind of was, I believe. Mark Platt had been in Pippin when he was a kid. In high school, he was really, really taken with the idea. He'd always wanted to produce a musical on Broadway. So this is how that part of it came together. So when John came in and John brought Dana in, that was when we went into hyperdrive.
Universal booked stages to freak us out. They were just like, well, the stages are booked. We're making the movie. We're like, there's no scripts. They were like, you better write them.
So, you said 9 months, right, is what you originally got to write both of them?
That's my memory of it. And at that point, with the help of John, we had come to a group decision, including Mark Platt, that it was going to be 2 movies. And that really made sense to us. This was a very hard decision and a very lengthy process of long discussions and thought. But what made sense to us was we didn't want to cut any of his score. In fact, as you can imagine, we wanted to add to the score because what's the fun and the artistic excitement of making it into a movie if we're not, to some extent, bringing in what we couldn't do on stage, bringing in more, adding to what we have on stage.
I want to get into these specific scenes like that so we can kind of tease out these choices and how you stayed true to such a legacy project. But I'm curious from both of your perspectives of how you ended up meeting the story where it was, like Winnie sitting with this for over 2 decades. You know, you and I talked about this concept of a beginner's mind. And then Dana, how you come and meet that with a fresh perspective, you know, how you kind of whatever research you do or prep that you do to honor the legacy.
Okay, so just in terms of beginner's mind, and that's a Zen term, probably everyone knows it. The field,
Not in Hollywood.
Just the idea of going to an innocent place within yourself, where you don't know everything, where in fact you don't know anything.
Winnie has to go to that place in her mind. I'm there. That's where I live.
That's a beautiful trait. Beautiful trait. No, for me, it was a lot of what I considered my job on these movies was to go there and to let myself start again, and not be so sure. Well, this has to happen and this has to happen, and really to entertain the idea that let me. I never use this term because I don't know very much about cars, but let me kick all the tires and let me try to understand within myself that I don't really know I don't know what these movies are. So I'm not coming in with a whole lot of baggage of like, well, we always did it this way. And so then when things are, for instance, opened up is one way to say it, or just reimagined, I can really be there with everyone else, and I'm not clinging, because that's part for me of how I want to be as a collaborator. I think part of Stephen's passion originally and why he wanted so much to convince Mark Platt to make it a musical is, part of it is he obviously writes musicals, but part of it is, that movie, that 1939 movie, which so influenced us as children and, influenced, if I dare say, the artists we would become, the storytellers we would become, that movie is a musical. So it's like the idea of going to Oz and it's not a musical seemed diminished.
Talk more about that legacy, how you pulled all of that up from the 30s, from the play, from, the iterations that you had with the screenplays you were working on, using legacy as like an anchor.
We were always talking about what can you do in a movie that you can't do in a musical. We started almost every discussion with that. So it was a lot about close-ups. It was about Elphaba can actually fly. She can go places. That's crazy.
Right, exactly.
We can see her as a baby. Winnie always talks about like they wanted to do that on stage, but then you've got this child and you're covering them with this like toxic green paint and you're like, you're here for 10 seconds.
Couldn't do that, but never let go of that dream.
But never let go of that dream. and then there we did it. And then we got to do it.
It's a deeper way of knowing her if you see her as a child. Also, we didn't have that much time to set up the sisters' relationship.
There was this idea of you just desperately wanted to see little Nessa's hand in the little green hand, like baby hands. And we knew we needed that. And we thought, if you see that, like you're on board with these people for the rest of their relationship and you care so deeply. And when the stuff starts to go bad, it's like, but the hands, the little hands.
And that's what we didn't have on stage.
And you didn't have that on stage.
Exactly. Once you're bringing in a scene from their childhood, then it's like, how can you get the most out of that scene, as Dana's saying. So another most that we wanted was, how can we set up that, how much the wizard means to her? Because one of the most emotional things in the show is that she's ultimately betrayed by this figure who she genuinely adored and looked up to as a father figure, because her own father was so rejecting. So again, this is kind of sketched in on stage. And this was our opportunity.
This is all about our wonderful Wizard of Oz. Do you know how he got here? No. From the sky in a balloon. See? Then he built a city made of emeralds, because he loves emeralds, even though they're green.
So the pop-up book, the idea was, how can we really make a moment where you feel her connection to that wizard and how much she thinks about him, what she's dreaming of for him, so that it's not, we do that on stage with The Wizard and I, the song, which is, more than wonderful, obviously, but but this is a movie. So how can we visually, I think I can safely say John just made so much of that pop-up book.
We had it in the script and they shot it. I don't remember if it was in the movie. You can tell me.
Yeah,
It came down to that and something bad, and they went with something bad.
Yeah. When they go to Emerald City, she sees the book again as an adult.
Pop-up book.
I want to talk a little bit about John and these differences from the play to the film. I love that you brought up the pop-up book, and then I think also one of the big first differences I saw was the arrival to Shiz, which, you know, you're coming in on this water.
Here's how John worked, I think. I mean, I'm going to try to understand. Stephen and I wanted to start the movie what we called the scene of the crime.
The direct result of a bucket of water thrown by a female child.
Like you're omnisciently in that castle and you're seeing that something, pardon me, but something bad happened there. And there's a puddle of water.
The Wicked Witch of the West is dead.
Because that's how the witch is killed in that famous movie. She's killed by a bucket of water thrown by a female child. So it's
Spoiler alert.
so it's a murder scene basically. So we always knew we wanted to start the movie there. So John jumps off from that we wanted to have this puddle of water.
I think what John does in his brain is he starts to get all these images. I don't want to speak for him, but I
Yeah.
have worked with him a bunch, and he gets images in his head, and they start to become ideas. But then he loves the collaborative
expands
process,
on them,
and
and
then
yeah.
so I think with the water, one of the things that started happening is in our exploration of I was sort of the person in the group who would ask these questions.
That was needed. That was needed.
Where I'd be like, no, Kat, like, what are her powers? And they'd be like, oh, because of the thing. And I'd be like, but can you say the words? What are her powers? Can she only fly? No, she can also do spells. Okay, but only if she has the Grimoire? Yes. Okay, got it. Like, it was like a lot of weird stuff like that was very specific, because when you're doing a movie, you have to world build in a way where you know every single answer. You don't necessarily have to say it in the movie, but as the writer, you have to know it so that you know what the rules of the world are that you're working with. And so I think one of our big discoveries was this idea that we got excited about when Elphaba was born, that all these objects would go shooting up into the ceiling. And that was when it clicked for John that, like, the whole thing for her was about gravity and about the idea that gravity was always weird around Elphaba. Well, what if we turn the water upside down, and what if it's dripping and you don't know that it's upside down at first?
And you don't even know what that is. What is that?
And
It's
you
like
don't know what it is.
So it starts with the mystery of, like, what am I looking at?
What am I even
And
looking
that's
at?
thematic, because the whole idea of Wicked, starting from our musical, starting from Gregory's novel, is what you think you have seen, there's more to it. What you're looking at, what if you looked at it from another angle, in a fresh way, with new eyes?
And that's classic John of, like, you had this idea about the water puddle.
And that, I mean, to me, see, I didn't think of that in all those iterations earlier before you came in. I was imagining them coming by train to Shiz. But the idea that they arrive by water, that is so brilliant because of what we were talking
on
about.
the surface versus what's under the
It's
surface.
what's under the surface. And also the water in Jungian psychology and maybe in other psychologies represents the subconscious and a sort of a dreamlike state. Like it's not naturalism. It's not ordinary life anymore. So if we get to Shiz by water, we're going to another realm. And that's how we enter the whole movie, really.
I went back and looked at the play.
It's very
It's
close.
like word for word.
It basically
with
is.
like the filmic rendering. I want to
Exactly.
point to this scene in particular because of one of these like legacy points and themes of secrets versus truth. And when you reminded me, the original artwork was, the poster of telling a secret. In this bonding scene, you have first Galinda saying, I can keep a secret, when she's asking her about
when they're first in the dorm room together.
Right.
How did you do it? Tell me, please. I can keep a secret. Fine.
be that way. But it really is rather selfish on your part. You know, I asked really nicely, and I saved you this whole
I don't know. I've never known.
There. Enjoy the air.
That first dorm room scene doesn't exist on stage. That's not in the stage musical. And that's an example of something where we had such a luxury of time. Since we knew we were going to divide the story and do two, we knew we had time to set them up a little more. So in other words, the fact that well, we're skipping over a big hunk, which is that obviously, if you know the show, the way that Elphaba gets into Shiz, the fact that it's tied to Morrible, and that's the start of their relationship in a deeper way, is. I mean,
Morrible was kind of a bigger change, I think, too, because
Yeah.
we wanted to make sure
we
people
rethought.
felt like she was a mother figure.
Yes.
Again, because then of course the betrayal is so much more painful. If you don't know right away that she's evil, and you kind of think, oh, she's the only one that actually understands Elphaba for real.
And you. Come with me.
Of course.
Not you. You. I would like to teach you privately and take no other students.
That was a hard leap because you know that the audience of the play knows that that's not true. So we were like,
exactly.
oh wow, we're gonna like
Let's be
retrain their
convincing.
brains
Let's
and
be
really,
convincing.
yeah, like really try to convince them
And
that maybe
also-
this time she's good.
Yes, exactly. And and you alone know, Dana, how many versions we did of that scene. I mean, because in other words, we knew we wanted it to be different in this way, that we were going to make more of Morrible relating and Elphaba relating to Morrible, Morrible relating to Elphaba. We wanted it to be different than it is on stage, but yet it has to end up the same way, where they're pushed together as roommates.
There's been some confusion, for you see, my roommate is unusually and exceedingly peculiar and altogether quite impossible to describe.
Blonde.
What is this feeling so sudden and new?
I felt the moment I laid eyes on you.
My pulse is rushing.
My head is reeling.
Yeah, well, my face is flushing. What is this feeling, fervent as a flame? Does it have a name? Yes. Loathing, unadulterated loathing.
The fact that they're college roommates is in Gregory's novel. It's one of the jewels that Stephen and I plucked from Gregory's novel, and it's just that was a brilliant idea, the fact that they're college roommates. But in the novel, it's a different story and it's a different relationship. They don't really go on to become friends.
Just the scene where we had to get them in, we had to establish Nessarose and Elphaba as adults. We had to meet Elphaba as an adult. We had to establish Morrible's relationship with Elphaba. We had to show that Shiz was a real place, do world building there.
And even a little of the animal story.
There's so much source material, and I think maybe there's a misconception that you can just easily translate this. But I mean, from the creative process you were doing, so much like throwing spaghetti at the wall.
It was very difficult, and it was all very intentional. And then I think in the first movie in particular, it seemed easy after the fact. It's sort of like, yeah, they did the play. It was great. And we were like, I got hives, I got an autoimmune disease, and I'm so tired. but like, sure, it's the play.
Well, because
I think
it
with the
holds
second-
true to the spirit of the play.
Yes. We were on Zoom, but we had the little index cards digitally. And then John started doing this thing where he created these digital Post-it notes, one set in pink and the other set in green. And next to every single scene, the pink card was about what Glinda was experiencing emotionally, and the green card was about what Elphaba was experiencing emotionally. And I will never do a movie again without doing that, because you should, in every single scene, you should be able to say to yourself, what is this person going through emotionally? Because structure is nothing if not the emotional journey of the characters. That's literally all structure is. Don't ever let anyone tell you it's math or it's like any kind of architecture. It's not. It's psychology and emotion. That's it.
And the choices they make.
And the choices they make because of their emotional. Yeah,
exactly.
out of their emotion.
Exactly.
Your big climax, and you've alluded to this already, like all of the things that are happening with something bad, moving into Madame Morble, who's almost this maternal figure, you know, the paternal figure in The Wizard, and then coming and having Elphaba get to be offered everything that she's ever wanted.
You have no real power.
Exactly. That's why I need you.
Think of your future, dearie.
Stay back.
Elfie, listen to them. Please.
Good advice, young lady. Listen, Elphaba, if you can pull this off, first crack out of the box, oh my golly, I can't even imagine. And I meant every word about you having a home here. It's gonna be you and me, and hey, if it'd make you happy, possibly your friend.
Really?
Why not?
I appreciated how in the film that got super slowed down, and we got to sit with her.
Yeah, and I remember him saying to us, let's take even more time, because I felt it was already slowed down, but he was saying even more time, and that was all to get inside of her. And he wanted to just like see, absolutely be able to show the moment when it's dawning on her how betrayed she's been. And he wanted to be inside the moments when she's realizing, wait a minute, I can't go along with this. And it's like a growing, almost like a bad dream. Yeah, storm, good is a good word.
And this theme of home comes up here too.
Yeah, home, in other words, what you just said before, Morable's become the mother figure. He's always been a father figure to her, and Morable has become that. So that naturally is going to lead your mind to thinking, so if she stayed with them, she would be home. Like that would be a form of a home, one that she never had since her mother died when Nessa was born, and her father was so rejecting.
And I think so many of us, we think like, I might take that deal, like if I had to give up just a little bit, be a little unethical or a little bit morally not who I am, but I get a home and I get someone to care about me and a dad who loves me.
And you can justify it. Yeah.
And you could really justify
it because for I mean, this leads us a little bit into the second movie, obviously, but for Glinda, this is what she's always wanted too, big time. And in her mind, she's going to be able to do it and still be a good person. I can do this. And who among us, hasn't been there where you think, but it's me, it's me. I can handle these people. I can still be a good person. I know right from wrong. I'm going to be okay. I mean, this doesn't have to be as bad as it might look. The story of Wicked, the story we're telling, is the same story that we started writing in the late 90s. That
it's about, are you going to find the courage inside you to stand up and do what's right, even if it costs you a lot? Right. I guess that's just something that you have to ask over and over throughout history, because no one wants to have to answer that question. Right. So circumstances have to force you to ask yourself that question. And answer it.
Well said.
You've been watching On Wicked, a conversation with Winnie Holzman and Dana Fox on Story. On Story is part of a growing number of programs in Austin Film Festival's On Story project that also includes the On Story radio program, podcast, book series, and the On Story archive, accessible through the Whitliff Collections at Texas State University. To find out more about On Story and Austin Film Festival, visit onstory.tv or austinfilmfestival.com.